Let's get to T. Martin's son. T. Martin's son, Kaden Martin, has had enough of Coral Gables. Former Knoxville Catholic baseball and football star Kaden Martin is leaving Miami after 1 year. He announced that on Twitter, saying, first off, I would like to thank the University of Miami for giving me the opportunity to grow as a player and person this past season. I would also like to thank each of my teammates and support staff around me for putting in the time to help me develop as a player. With that being said, my family and I have decided that it's in my best interest to enter the transfer portal and continue my collegiate career elsewhere, likely at Tennessee. Now, I added that last part. He said, looking forward to the next chapter. So the question is that came up during our 3:30 a.m. Production meeting is, should Tennessee take Kaden Martin? The answer is a resounding heck yeah. Why wouldn't you take him? He plays baseball as well. I mean, why wouldn't you take him? I would go after him in a heartbeat.
No, I agree. The baseball part is the biggest reason to go after him. Kaden Martin as a quarterback, the unfortunate thing about him was, I don't know if people know this, but he was offered by Alabama when he was an 8th grader. It was one of those early offers. But as you know, Dave, covering recruiting, that you have to estimate that they're going to grow into a certain size that Kaden Martin never grew into. So he only was a 2-star coming out. So he doesn't have his father.
So he was offered in football, not baseball.
Yes, in football.
In 8th grade by Nick Saban program?
He was offered by Nick Saban. Yeah, so he doesn't have his father's raw physical gifts.
Maybe they were thinking that they had to get him pretty quick before the kid got paid like T did. Anyway. I'm joking.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't get paid. Maybe. But
well, I mean, I don't think T has been back to Alabama ever since he left Alabama. I'll just say that much.
There's a really gray area over whether or not he was a prospect at the time, but he did receive money from a Tennessee booster that lived in Alabama. That was the report. So anyway, but yeah, Kaden Martin did not grow into what T did. Is that part of the issue?
He didn't grow into T's physical stature. He's like 5'11", 6 feet-ish, 205. T was listed as 6'2". I think he's closer to 6'3". And we're talking 216, like 225 probably actually when he played, I'm guessing around that area. So it's the same issue with Navy Shuler. Navy Shuler is the exact same story. His father, he didn't grow into his father's size, or didn't have his father's physical gifts. He's at Tennessee right now. And it's so funny to think about this, to have Kaden Martin and Navy Shuler, if they were both on the offense, because they both surrounded Peyton Manning, but they are two of the most similar style of quarterbacks I can think of, T. Martin and Heath Shuler. They're very similar with their styles and how they played.
Yeah, I actually think that Heath was better all around as far as an athlete. I thought he could have won the decathlon. I think you and I have talked about this. If somebody had to put their arm around a 10-year-old Heath Shuler and said, we're going to train you, he would have won the gold medal in the Olympics in the decathlon. There's no question in my mind. He was that physically gifted. He's one of the most physically gifted people that I've ever been around. So, I mean, that's a pretty high standard right there. But T was right up there.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. T was right up there too. No question.
Yeah. And I've always wondered, like, who was the better quarterback? Because, I mean, obviously T was the winner, but, you know, the thing that makes it tricky for me is they both had an unfortunate circumstance. T's first year starting was better than Heath's first year starting, but Heath's first year starting was the whole 1992 Fulmer Majors saga, which split the whole team apart.
It's crazy.
But yeah, exactly. But T's second year starting versus Heath's second year starting, they both started 2 years. T had Randy Sanders instead of David Cutcliffe coaching him his second year, whereas Heath got David Cutcliffe basically both years. And I'm like, what could T. Martin have done in 1999 if David Cutcliffe was still there? I feel like he would have been a lot, because he kind of regressed from 98 to 99.
He did a little bit, and I think that he had the fundamentals in place from working with David. I think, though, that you have to continue to pound that home, and I don't think that was pounded home nearly as much. I mean, you got to remember, T. Martin's almost the same age as Randy Sanders at the time it took over. I mean, that's a slight exaggeration, but they were only like 10, 12 years different. So it's tough to stay on him about fundamentals. And then I think you and I would agree that play design, game planning, and everything slipped from David Cutcliffe to Randy Sanders. No offense to Randy, but it slipped a little, right?
Absolutely. Funny enough, after looking at Randy when he was at ETSU, and there's some coaches like this, he's more of a head coach than a coordinator. And I know that's like, you always say someone's a coordinator, not a coach, but there are people who they actually can make good head coaches, but they're not necessarily cut out as coordinators. And I think Randy Sanders kind of fits that bill a little bit.
Well, and let's be honest, Phillip also Fulmer, he disassociated himself to a certain extent with coaching. Not completely, but to a large extent, he wanted to be the CEO. He said that when David Cutcliffe was rehired to a group of reporters after the press conference. He said, I think the best way to grow this thing is for me to be the CEO type and be able to raise money and recruit. That sounds good in theory, but he's a very good offensive coach. So he didn't need to be that removed. So I think that's part of the
offensive line coach. I'm only going as far as offensive line coach.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I'll take that. But still, to have another intelligent offensive coach in the room means something. And I don't think Randy had a lot of that. I think he was expected to be John Chavis or David Cutcliffe and just take it over. That's yours. Run with it. Go, Randy, go. And I think that's very difficult to do when you've coached these players as a position coach and making that jump. And quite frankly, it may have just really been outside of his realm of ability.
Yeah, and this is the problem with Fulmer. If you want to be the CEO, because I think I see like Dabo Swinney as a CEO, and I'm sure you do too, as a CEO of a program. But if you're going to be a CEO,
totally do. And when you lose Brent Venables, I think there's a real issue there. But yes, totally.
Right.
That's a really good. I think that's what Phillip wanted to be.
Right, exactly. And if you want to be a CEO, the rule number one is you have to make the right staff hires. I mean, that's you can't be a CEO unless you know you're going to make the right staff hires. So you have to know that Randy Sanders is an offensive coordinator material. You have to know that Dave Clawson's not going to fit with your offense or what you're trying to do, and the dynamics are just going to be a massive catastrophe, which it was. And so,
who remembers these names? Pat Washington and Larry Slade, receivers coach and defensive backs coach, respectively. They were, I thought, and a lot of people thought they were given too long of a leash and held on way, way too long. So that gets out. I never thought of it from this perspective, but that gets into the whole managing a staff thing, where if Dabo Swinney doesn't prove he can do that without Brent Venables, you've got a real problem. Now, he may do that. I know he brought in Lincoln Riley's, is it Brian? He brought in his Garrett as the offensive coordinator. Maybe he can be the CEO type, but I don't think it worked for Phillip Fulmer. And be able to fire friends, as Smoky Mountain Red pointed out. Let's remember, these guys were making $75,000, $100,000 a year. And if you fired them, it's not like you can coach for another program down the road. You're going to have to relocate your family. There was that sort of thing that Fulmer had to deal with. So I give him a little grace on that.
Well, and there was, with the friends thing there. Yes, you got stuck with maybe Larry Slade and Pat Washington. You also got incredible loyalty out of Dan Brooks, maybe the best position coach in Tennessee football history.
Steve Caldwell.
Yeah, and so it pays off either way. It's just, I think you can't, if you want to be the CEO like that, then when you hire the staff, you have to give them the keys. And so, like you've talked about, Fulmer gave Dave Clawson the keys, but he's like, but I still want this system to be run. Well, I guarantee you, Dabo is hiring a staff, and he is completely washing his hands from that and saying, you know what? You guys run the offense. I'm not going to force you into something I'm trying to run.
Worst move that Phillip Fulmer made with his coaching staff before we get to SEC spring meetings was?
I mean, it was obviously hiring Dave Clawson. I mean, that's easily number one, but Randy Sanders
was made about a month before that.
Not promoting Trooper Taylor?
Yep.
Do you think Trooper Taylor was coordinator material though? I mean, that's good.
I think that it took me 30 minutes of research to figure out that Dave Clawson was very questionable coordinator material. I think that you're fair to question whether or not Trooper Taylor was ready, but he had coached running backs, so he knew blocking schemes inside the box, and he had coached receivers, so he knew passing trees. Is he going to be the next David Cutcliffe? Probably not. But is he going to be as good as Dave Clawson at that time in Dave Clawson's career? I have zero doubt that was the case. Question, where is Trooper Taylor? He was a Duke, and I have his number. I need to reach out to him. I haven't talked to him. He's one of the few people that I would really call a friend in the coaching community. There's always that natural barrier between media and coaches. So I need to reach out to him. Vassy Lawn and Guard, Man Alive, it's worth the drive in Cleveland, Tennessee. Industrial and commercial mowers, worth the drive from Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga. It's Vassy Lawn and Guard, Man Alive, it's worth the drive. Go to vassy.com to learn more. Toro, count on it. And they bring you the Vol Report, brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden, the Vol Report with Jacob Warren. I will call Trooper and we'll get him on the show. He'll bring it, throw high heat. There's no question about it.